All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Jomo Stewart here at the Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation. I'm joined by Mr. Roger Burgraff. We also have a Mr. Jason Grant and a Miss Julie Lucky from Alaskans for Better Elections. And we're here today. Again, I know it's a little off subject, our energy meetings, but of course, you all know we just like to do things of community import, good knowledge. And this is one of those things. And so they're here to discuss ranked choice voting and the open primary. As you'll recall, this is actually our third meeting on this subject. The first one was a pro, the second one was a con, but it's the law now. And so it is going to be, ranked choice voting is going to be in operation this fall for some of our elections, if not all. And so we thought it would be a good opportunity with our friends from Alaskans for Better Elections here in town, to get a feel for how that process will work so that our residents can be as comfortable as possible with that process. And so, yeah, without further ado, I'll go ahead and hand it over. Mr. Grant.
Well, thank you for having us. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And if there's questions along the way, feel free. We'll try to watch the chat or someone will have you, sir, look for the chat, but obviously questions at the end too, if there's something that can wait. But yes, thank you for having us. Myself, I'm Jason Grant, the Executive Director of Alaskans for Better Elections, and Julie Lucky is our Chief Operations Officer. And we're in town doing a lot of presentations and meetings. And so really fortunate, feel thankful for the opportunity to share with you guys about what's coming up in these elections. Yeah, all of our state elections, your state house, state senate, all the way up through governor will be using ranked choice voting in the open primary. So our work as a nonprofit, as a C3, is to educate every voter in the state so they feel confident, they feel inspired with these changes, that when they go vote, that they know how to do it. When we go into rooms, as mentioned, there's a pro and a con. We know that there's people who voted against this, who maybe still don't understand it, or people who love it, who are big proponents of it. But our work is done solely in a nonpartisan way to educate people, to answer questions, to get the correct information out there. And it's just like if the speed limit was changing on a highway, you got to put up new signs. That's what we're doing. And so again, thanks for having us, and we'll get started with the presentation. Really what I want to go over is just briefly talk about what's been happening since ballot measure 2 passed, some of the implementation and education work, go through the big 3 changes. If you go to view here in the top left over here.
By the way, can everyone see the screen?
Full screen mode on the bottom, and we'll take it from there.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay.
Let's see. So we're working through a PDF today as opposed to our normal PowerPoint. So if we have some technology things, we'll see how that works. Oh, perfect.
There we go.
So as I mentioned, we're briefly talk about what's been happening since the ballot, the Citizens Initiative passed. The 3 big changes that most people want to know about, most voters have questions about. And then really, as community leaders and people who are involved in different organizations and networks, how can you help? This sort of change doesn't go on successfully if we don't have everyone kind of rowing in the same direction and talking about the correct information, just like probably anything else in life. So let's see if I can. All right, here we go. All right, so really quickly, as we've mentioned, where we've been in November of 2020, the Citizens Initiative passed, as I mentioned, a pretty divisive ballot measure, and passed 51-49, and but as mentioned, it's also the law of the land, and that's what we're here today to talk about. But last July, the Superior Court upheld that this was constitutional. This past fall, the Supreme Court upheld it's constitutional. During that timeline, also going through a regulations and public comment process with the Division of Elections, the Department of Law, really making sure that the intended consequences of what was written in the ballot measure are what really is happening, crossing T's, dotting I's, that sort of work. And then also this spring, let's see. Sorry, oh, perfect. I can do that if that's easy. I don't know. This spring and summer with the Division of Elections, our group, along with many other organizations and individuals, are working on a statewide outreach efforts to make sure, as I mentioned, every Alaskan knows how to work their ballot properly. And then in August and November of this year, all of these rules will be in place. So we get asked often what, and I don't want to go into the debate. As you mentioned, you've had the pros and the cons and talked about this, but what was the the problems that this is fixing. One of the issues was the closed primary. For a long time, Alaskans actually enjoyed an open primary system. That changed in about the year 2000. So this really is just a return to that open primary system with a little bit of a twist. But because there's over 60% of Alaskans actually don't affiliate with one of the two major parties, they were being excluded in a way during those closed primary system. If you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent in our primary system in the past, you were asked what ballot you would like. What that did was exclude people from voting for people who they wanted to if they were on a different ballot.
Well, it was closed-ish, because I thought it was
Closed, closed-ish.
only the Republicans, and you couldn't vote in that primary if you were a registered Democrat.
And that's true. And if you were a Democrat, you couldn't vote for a Republican in a primary if you wanted to. And vice versa. If you were a Republican and there was a Democrat on a race you wanted to vote for, you couldn't. And so really what this is doing is
not without
changing and going back. And
yeah,
yes, it was special.
Confusing, if you're a first-time voter or, someone who you're independent, you always have that one ballot, but there is someone different you'd like to vote for. It was confusing. And so what this does really is go back to how this used to work in Alaska with really that open primary system. Another issue that we had in our elections in Alaska was a first past the post, a plurality election. And that's obviously very common throughout the United States. That's how many places work that. But in Alaska, without the two major parties being a majority of the voters, what was happening was that many elections were candidates were winning without a majority support. So they'd head to Juneau with a 45% of support from their district.
If
you see, we've had 7 governors win that way in our state history. And in fact, no US Senate seat has been won with more than 50% since 2002. And so in our state with a long history of viable third party, independent candidates, write-in candidates, we thought that this shift, moving to a majority support RCV type of election would be more represent the voters in a better way. So with all of that said, what has been happening? Oh, sorry, Mr. So getting used to our PDF navigation. So what's been happening since ballot measure 2 passed in November of 2020? Well, we're working through the implementation process and also the education process. But what does that mean and how that would be done? Well, right now we're focused on making sure all of this is done legally, transparently, and inclusively, working with every group and any group who wants presentations like this or has networks they want to share the correct information to, working with the division elections so we can show the process in the best way so that every Alaskan knows how this works. And as I mentioned, legally, making sure this is done to the letter of the law. So implementation, the back end of some of that work means software upgrades to the current ballot tabulators. New tabulators had to be purchased. There were still communities around the state that were doing hand counting as opposed to using the ballot machines that you're probably used to. And so now all of our communities around the state have machine counts. And working with the Department of Law, again, just coming through that process, making sure everything is up to par. The education process, as said, entirely nonpartisan. Our work is done to just educate all voters from A to Z along the political spectrum. We do this in a broad outreach. Next week, we're going to Kodiak to be at Comfish. We're going to Kenai the following week. We've been to Haines. We've been everywhere around the state, just working with Alaskans across, everywhere we can through community events and presentations such as this. Yesterday, we were able to do a presentation at TCC, doing a chamber luncheon today, just pretty much anywhere that will have us and have the information. Once this information we're willing to work with and talk to. And that means dozens of organizations, obviously across the state, hundreds of individuals who are helping get the word out. This is going to be successful or not based on how Alaskans can get along and talk about the correct information and get this information out to their voters. We're working with all sorts of national and local experts on this sort of change. You'll see later in the presentation, this sort of system is relatively unique, but there's also jurisdictions who have done this before, and so we're not entirely the guinea pigs or the new game on the block, but there's people we've talked to who can help us out. This is done through grassroots efforts and paid advertising. It's everything from meeting for coffee doing early morning presentations to paid advertising on YouTube and TV stations and radio. And so really just getting the word out in every way we can. And that means knowing that people learn differently and we want to meet people where they are. And that means creating resources for people who maybe like presentations, or maybe this is really boring to them, or someone who really likes to see a video about how this works, or someone who just needs a handout. So hearing back from groups, hearing what's best for them and creating those resources and getting those out, that's part of the education process as well. So what are the three big changes? The three big changes that you heard during the campaign really revolve around how people vote and the information they receive. And we'll go into those. So the first change is the open primary. As I've said, open primaries had a long history in Alaska up into about the year 2000, where it changed to a closed-ish type system, but we're back to where we used to be with a little bit of a twist. But an open primary, all it means really is that it's an election that requires a voter. They don't have to declare their party affiliation to participate. You'll see here across America, many states actually use an open primary system. The open primary system is used in 33 different states, and then an additional 5 states in kind of that closed-ish or open-ish type of system. But 2 states use something that's pretty similar to Alaska. Washington and California use a top 2 nonpartisan open primary. So that means in their states, the top 2 vote getters, regardless of their party affiliation, move on to the general election, where people would then choose between one of 2 choices. In Alaska, we're moving to a top 4 open primary system, which means the top 4 vote getters will move on to the general election. This is unique for the United States. No other state does a top 4 open primary system. Here's a sample ballot from the state of Alaska. It looks very similar to what you've seen in the past. You have all the different races that are happening, and you'll see that this is not ranked choice voting. This is just a open primary, simple ballot like you've seen in the past. So you will be voting for just one candidate per race in the primary. So you can see there on the top left, you've got your U.S. Senate race. If you have kids or like Pixar movies, you can see the state of Alaska has decided to use kind of Pixar and Disney type characters. So you've got Chick Hicks and Buzz Lightyear and other Finn McMissile. Again, if you're into Pixar or Disney movies, you'll recognize those names. The one change, though, you'll notice is on that bottom left, where the governor and lieutenant governor are actually running together on one ballot. If you pay attention to the news, the governors who have announced their candidacy, several of them have selected a lieutenant governor already. This is different. We've never done this before in Alaska's history. Usually the governor and lieutenant governor run separately. The 2 winners in their primary system would get matched up. This system changes it to where obviously the governor and lieutenant governor run together. They don't have to file that way until the June 1st deadline, but as mentioned, many of the candidates already have selected a lieutenant governor.
Actually, can you go back for a second?
Yeah, let's see.
Do we have any questions at this juncture? I would like to open it up just as a reminder to everyone. Again, we do have the chat box open, or you can just go ahead, as is our custom, you can go ahead and just unmute yourself or raise your hand. I'll acknowledge you. But again, if you have any questions, please do feel free. So again, regarding the one lower left, so they're paired up right out of the chute under the new system.
Yeah, and as mentioned, I think, let's see, 3 or 4 of the governors have already selected a running mate. I think Governor Dunleavy has not. The other major candidates have, and there's some other party candidates who have not and have as well. I think we're up to about 7 or 8 governor candidates. But they have until June 1st. And right now, with fundraising and legislative session being in session, I think that's a change that people have noticed probably that is different than some of the others, since they haven't had to vote yet, but they've seen the news about announcements and things like that. So not a lot of feedback on this. And this is something that during the campaign probably wasn't discussed as much as the other big changes, but again, something unique to Alaska and first time trying it. So we'll see how it goes. There's a question, I think.
Yes, Clark, please.
Yes, a brief question just to make sure that we're on top of this. As you'd said, I think, like in the governor's race, governor, lieutenant governor's race, there may be 7 pairs. And is it the top 4 that move into the general election?
That's correct.
Because it's, yeah.
Yep,
Thank you.
that's correct. So if there's 3 candidates for a race, you can see here on the ballot, that state Senate race only has 3 candidates. All 3 candidates would move on. You can see in the race below it, the state rep race, there's 4 candidates. So all 4 would move on. The top 4, regardless of their party affiliation, move on. So if there's 5 or 6, the top 4 vote getters move on to the general election. It could be 4 Republicans. It could be 2 and 2, 3 and 1, whatever combination, but the top 4 vote getters, regardless of party affiliation, move on.
Okay. So the winnowing, again, for large number races, that's where the first winnowing would come, is coming out of the primary, because again, anyone below 4, the top 4 would drop off.
Correct. Again, regardless of their party affiliation, you'll only vote for one person. So if there's, the governor's race, there's 5 people here on this sample ballot. There's probably 1 of each, but let's say there was 3 Republicans and you tend to vote with that party, you only will select 1. And moving forward, then the top 4 vote getters would then move on to the race. And so I think in this, the race we have, I think there's already 3 or 4 Republican gubernatorial candidates. But as a nonpartisan or a Democrat or Republican, you can pick any of those now, and you pick 1 candidate.
So from a voter's perspective, the primary voting process itself will be similar. The difference will be that everybody will be on the ballot similar to how it used to be. So you'll have Democrats and Republicans on the same ballot. So should you prefer to have one, your local person, you might like someone from a different party than the person at the top of the ticket, this would allow you to do that. And the difference would be that, of course, the governor and lieutenant governor are running as a pair, and then it'll be the top 4 will go to the general, as opposed to the top Republican and the top Democrat and the top whatever other party might be.
Okay. So to the old system, essentially the voters paired the governor and lieutenant governor through their votes. What would happen if someone didn't have a running mate yet?
Yeah, so when you file on June 1st, you have to file. You have to fill in. You might just pick your brother or your dad now because no one else wants to join you. But you do have to file officially. You have to file as a team. You have to have appear on the ballot. You have to have a lieutenant governor.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's don't want to confuse anyone or get into kind of the weeds. There is some opportunity post a primary election that people are able to swap. Just as of now, you can still kind of swap. We've seen that in the past. There's a timeline that allows for that, but I think that'd be a bold political move to run all summer with someone as your lieutenant governor and then switch them out after you win or top 4 and move on. But there still is time allows for that sort of thing still on the ballot.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are we doing so far, gang? All right. Well, again, as always, just know you can weigh in, ask your questions. This is all for you.
As I mentioned, all voters now will use the same primary ballot. There's no more selecting a ballot or wondering where your voter registration, who you're with, and who you can vote for. Every Alaskan will receive the same ballot. You'll pick 1 candidate that you like best in each race, regardless of their party, and then the top 4 vote getters move on to the general election. So you think of that primary as the top 4. You could have a 4-way tie of 25%. Those all 4 would move on, and you cannot win the primary. The point with ranked choice voting and general elections, you have to get to 50% to win. You cannot do that in a primary. Even if you get 70%, everyone still moves on to the general election. So you can't. The race isn't over, even if you win, quote unquote,
They're
majority
competitive right through the general election.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right, change number 2. Change number 2, obviously, ranked choice general elections is where there's a lot of questions and a new ballot, and people think differently now as a voter and a candidate, and we'll go through those changes and what that means for Alaskans. But ranked choice voting, really what it means is you're just ranking candidates in the order of preference. You can vote as many as you like. You can vote for 1, you can vote up to 4, you can vote for 2 of the 4. Your ballot is still valid, and we'll show you ways not to use it. But again, as a voter, you never want to vote or show support for someone that you don't want to vote for, just like in the past. We would never ask you to do that. Ranked choice voting, it sounds new. It sounds, this new voting experiment, but it's actually, it's used across the world. Australia has used it for over 100 years. Scotland uses it. Ireland uses it. Many other countries use it. Here in the States, though, you can see it's used in a variety of different ways at different levels. The state of Maine actually uses it for their presidential primaries and other statewide races. Many states in the South use it for military and overseas voters, just as a way to simplify the ballot process. Instead of getting them multiple ballots and it might not get in time, they use ranked choice voting for their ballots for overseas voters. 23 cities in Utah just used it for the first time this fall. The Republican Party in Virginia and Utah both use it as a nominating process for their governors. And then many other states, Minneapolis, Santa Fe, San Francisco, Lansing, Michigan, are using it. And so it's not a new idea, but it's a new idea when it's attached to an open primary like Alaska is using. So we are unique in that sense.
Now, my understanding wasn't Maine one of the first locations in the country to give it a go?
Maine was the first state to use it. So it's from a city level, I think they're up to about 55 different cities using it across the United States. Colleges use it for their student governments. Found out yesterday TCC uses it for their internal elections. It's quite an interesting process when you, especially at a small level, when you kind of see what it does for candidates, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But it's in a lot of ways, the data suggests it does what we think it does. And we'll talk about some of those benefits here in a moment.
So it seems more novel than it actually is.
It does, because it's from a statewide level. It's only used in one other state, Maine, right? And but you run into people who go, oh yeah, I lived in X city. We've been using it for a long time. Or
I lived in X country.
Or a country.
Australia, right?
Yeah. So yeah, we had a political science professor from University of Australia. He came to Seattle for a presentation on this, and he called us and he's like, I just found out Alaska's using this. We use it in Australia. It's no big deal, but I read all of some articles of what's going on in Alaska. I wanted to get our take on things. And we asked him, what's it done in Australia politics? Well, he said it makes politics boring, because it got rid of negative advertising, this polarization, and kind of those things. And I said, I would take boring for a while. I would not mind boring. But and again, we'll talk about that here in a moment, some of the benefits. This is the ballot from the state of Alaska that they are, this is their sample ballot. Again, it looks different. It looks like, this grid system. I'll zoom in here in a moment, but you can see it's got instructions on the top, and then it's got a lot of bubbles. And when you first look at it, you might think, well, this, what am I supposed to do? How many bubbles? Where and which do I do? Again, instructions on the top. And let's zoom in here. And really, this is what it looks like. You have a number of candidates, and you have a number of choices. So rows and columns. And if you think of just one dot per candidate and one row, one column, how that works. And so this voter decided to rank these candidates: moose, whale, bear, and eagle. Decided all four candidates were worthy of some sort of support, 1 through 4. But this is how it's done. Again, instructions on the top. You look at the ballot down, and you kind of you rank in your preference. Very simple. 1, 2, 3. Choose your top candidate. It's your first choice. If you have a second choice, though not required, you select another candidate as long as it's different from your first choice. And step 3, if you want to support the third and fourth candidates, if there are third and fourth candidates, you just select them. You just make sure they're different from your first and second choices.
And I know we've kind of belabored this point, but a lot of people have that question, is like, do I have to rank? You don't have to rank. You never have to vote for it. Your ballot will not be thrown out if there's only one bubble in there. But if there's somebody that you like that you don't think, might get enough votes, then, and there's someone you like, okay, maybe put them as your second choice, but there's no requirement that you rank more than one candidate if there's only one candidate that you like for that race.
So you can make it a binary if you choose to.
Yeah, you sure can. And in many races, if there's only 2 or 3 candidates,
Right.
I think you'll find people who still go, well, yeah, I like my Republican, or I like my Democrat. The other one isn't going to get my support. Ballot is valid. Valid just like it would in the past. It's totally fine. We'll show up a couple examples on how not to do, or what we don't recommend as well. You can see here on this ballot, this is the summer, winter, spring, fall battle. Someone decided, I love winter so much, I'm giving them all of my choices. I'm going to just supercharge my vote, and this is really going to help winter. Unfortunately, that wouldn't do what you think it would do. You would put your ballot into the machine, and it would look at this and go, okay, winter is their first choice. If winter is eliminated and it has to look at your second choice, it wouldn't know where to go. It has no other place to put your ballot now, and so your ballot after that first choice is basically exhausted and has no place to go. So this doesn't help winter in any other way except for its first choice. We've heard people say, "Well, this is how I'm going to do it because this will help winter." It doesn't help the way you think it does. Again,
But it doesn't make it invalid.
Doesn't
No,
make it invalid, right? So if winter was the front runner, then the ballot would just count for winter. But if winter got eliminated, the second choice vote would never come into play, right? Because winter would not still be a candidate, basically.
And if you voted this way and it did count, this would make one person, one vote not work, because this would essentially be giving winter 5 votes, and you're only allowed as one person to vote once. Another way, this example would spoil your ballot. You've decided you love all the candidates equally, and I want them all to have my first choice. Well, again, you put this into the machine, it looks at it and goes, I don't know where to put this. And so this race, at least of your ballot, obviously it would look at the rest of your ballot and look at the other races. But in this case, this race, it would spoil this part of your ballot.
Oh, then it is very good that you're giving these presentations.
But I would point out that in the same way that if there was only first choice, like there was in the last election, and you marked 2 people, that would also spoil your ballot for that race. So that isn't changed with ranked choice voting. This would be the same as if you had voted for 2 candidates using the previous ballot, right?
And I should share, these examples really don't happen that often. Talking to division elections, there's always a number of ballots that get spoiled, a small percentage of them. But with a new system and new examples, we know that sometimes mistakes happen or confusion, and that's why we're going through this. Okay. This is another of what we don't recommend. I love winter so much, it gets my first choice, but I don't like the other seasons. But I want to show fall a little bit of support, so I'll give them a 4th choice. I don't know what this voter might be wanting to do with the ballot and what they would, what they were thinking, but you would get the first choice would count. Obviously, you put it in the machine, it would count. But the machine would also spit it back out and say, there's been a mistake, something's going on. We've looked at this and you've missed a 2nd and 3rd choice. Is that what you wanted? Is that what you intended? If you put it back in the machine and say, yes, that's what I intended, it wouldn't be able to count your 4th choice. Because what happens is after it looks at 2 blank spaces, it assumes your ballot is blank and doesn't look for any other choices if it skips two choices. Again, this doesn't happen often. Not sure if this would happen, but skipping 2 of the choices, leaving two blank, will spoil your ballot past that first choice. Again, if you go in with, from a voter education standpoint and say, vote for who you want to, that's really simple. That 9 times out of 10 is going to be good enough for the machines to count and have a valid ballot. Just looking for questions really quick. So we'll zoom in again. Here's what this looks like with the summer, winter, spring, fall. So if you think of those 4 candidates, summer, winter, spring, and fall, we'll show you how the counting works, the back end tabulation of this. Okay. So this is the 4 candidates. We've collected all the ballots. We've gone through the first round, and this is how we ended up: winter, summer, fall, spring. You can see winter and fall neck and neck. Winter maybe up 1 or 2 percentage points. Under the old system, your first past the post plurality elections, if you had 4 candidates, winter would be declared the winner with about 33%, 34% of the ballots cast. They would be the winner. They would head to Juneau. But under this new system, that you're trying to get to 50%. You see that black line near the top of the graphic. No winner is declared until someone gets to 50% plus 1. So what happens when no one receives 50%? Well, the last place candidate, their first place votes are now eliminated. So that would be Summer. So what happens now is we look at the people who voted for Summer first. We look at those ballots. We go, okay, who did those voters choose second? Where did they give their second preference? And now we're going to distribute those second choice ballots to the other candidates. So if me and Julie both voted for Summer first, and our first place candidate is now eliminated, they look at our ballots and go, well, Jason voted for fall, Julie voted for spring, and that's where those ballots go now. So let's look at, in this example, where the Summer.
I just hope you're going to balance the I love winter psychos.
Well, Summer, winter went to their base, and those 33% of people were very excited.
I just assured I'd never get elected office.
Yeah.
So we're good now.
So you can see here the summer vote, the summer ballots were then distributed to the other candidates based on who they were
Their second
choice. And we'll do an interactive example here in a moment. But winter gained a little, fall gained a little bit, and spring gained actually quite a lot, but not enough for anyone to get to 50%. And so we have to do this one more time. We have to eliminate one more candidate and distribute those candidates' ballots to now their spring's second choices and summer's third choices. So that's why it's important to, if you want to show support in different ways, this is why those second and third choices can be very important.
Well, that's what I was wondering regarding, because that was a good technical point. So we just did Summer. They were easy. They were the lowest vote getter. Theirs just get distributed. But now you have reweighted the other candidates. And so it starts with springs. Now we'll move to spring.
Yeah, so spring will be eliminated in this next round. It was last place. If you voted for spring first, and we have to move your ballots now, it's who your second choice was. If I voted for
from the original cohort.
Yep, from that original ballot.
That's the first. Okay.
Yep. If I voted for Summer first and then spring second, man, I'm not picking the best candidates apparently. But now my spring ballot, they look at my third choice. Did Jason vote for a third choice? Maybe I didn't. And my ballot now is done. But if I did, where does it go next between winter and fall? And we'll see what happens here.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, fall got a lot of support from those spring voters and those summer voters, enough to get past that 50% threshold +1. So in this case, in this race, fall would be declared the winner, as they've now gained enough support, 50% +1. So again, in the old system, winter would have won with 33%. Fall, very close second, but through whatever campaigning fall did to gain a lot of those summer and spring supporters, was able to gain more and more and get that 50% majority. So now they're the winner. They can say, I'm going to Juneau with the majority support of my neighborhood. Not the majority of those first place votes, but the majority of support from their neighborhood.
I want to make one note, because there has been some confusion. You'll see winter, the blue line, the light blue line, those are all the first place votes. So the people that voted for winter and fall first, their ballots just stayed with their first choice the whole time. The second and third didn't come into play. There was some confusion about whether or not your second choice would but that kind of shows why you wouldn't want to vote winter all the way across or summer, right? Because if your first choice stays on the board, then your your second choice and your third choice won't ever come into play.
Another way to think of this is, if there's 4 candidates, let's say we have four corners of a room, and I ask, we fill out our ballots, and I ask, here's the winter corner, the spring corner, summer corner, fall corner. And I ask everyone, look at the ballot and go to the corner of who you voted for first. So we all go to our corners. And then when summer was eliminated, I say, okay, summer corner people, who do you have number 2? And all those people would go walk to the corner of who there was number 2. So that's how the votes get moved.
Unless they didn't have a number.
Unless they didn't have a number 2, then they can go out in the hallway. And then in the same way, spring, okay, spring now is eliminated. Whoever's in spring, who was your second choice? And those summer people, who were your third choices, go to those corners of the room. So you can see you're keeping your vote tally, but you're adding preferences from other candidates. So obviously the official winner can't be declared until all the votes are counted in those early votes, absentee votes. It's important that every vote gets counted, because you don't want to eliminate someone early. And all of this work, just like we just showed, all that round by round, those totals will be released to the public from the division elections. The Division of Elections, I should say, is doing a great job. Proactive education. They have a great website with the sample ballots and videos and FAQs. They're really doing a lot of work in educating people from just the facts. They've done. They started that work last summer, so they've been really proactive, doing a great job. So if you have a smartphone and you want to vote, we're going to do this a quick election. I think we've got enough people to kind of make it work. And so yeah, grab your camera and get the QR code. It should take you to a site where you can rank fall, spring, summer, and winter in a grid. Is it working for you?
Yeah, just don't take the picture, just put it back up, and then when the yellow thing comes.
There we go.
There. Did you want to vote? You can vote on my phone. So spring,
So
summer, winter,
oh, yeah.
and fall.
I see.
So you could just click which one you want. Which one do you like the best?
Is everyone trying this?
Fall. Okay, we'll do fall for number one. Do you want to pick a number two?
And you'll see
or
if you
just want
try to do
pick a
something, if you try to give everyone a first place vote, it won't let you.
The number.
And so submit that
And you don't have
ballot,
to. We could just stick with fall.
and you'll go to a screen that says, "Thanks for your vote."
Spring.
And
All
if
right.
you hit
Want number
preliminary
3 or are we done?
results,
Sorry.
All right, so we'll submit.
Uh-huh.
And then I wish that you could share the screen on the results. You'd have to go to the website. But
Oh,
hopefully
yeah.
everybody. So I'll show you the results on my phone right here. So right now we have fall is winning.
Uh-huh.
Oh, in a tiebreaker. So you'll kind of see the rounds here.
Hmm.
Oh, that's
and then
cool.
if you scroll down a little bit on your page, it'll show you the round by round how it worked.
Right now they're
So,
tied. So
yeah.
let's okay, there we go. Now we got some rounds.
So,
So right
yeah,
now you see summer and
refresh it.
fall
Let's see if we get a
were
few more
tied,
votes. Let's see
But then the
where we got
winter
to.
moved into summer. And that's how they won in round two.
Okay,
Is
so
it electioneering if I comment you should vote for winner?
Yes,
Well, the
it is
poll-
electioneering.
we've got
The polls are open now, so you can't.
so we've got some campaigning on the chat,
Right.
and we've been asked to change. Yeah, so someone needs to be rebanded to fall. So yeah, from a candidate's perspective, right? It's all about your branding and how, yeah.
Summer.
So if you refresh it, I think we've got 7 votes, which is just enough to show us. In the first round, summer and fall were tied. And then in round 2, and then round 3, this is how we got to a winner. So,
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
and so yesterday when we did this at TCC, we had about 85 votes. And it was, again, just many people go, well, I still don't understand it. And when you get to kind of vote and kind of see this work, the light bulb does go off for people. And so some of our work is presentations at the brewery. We can say, okay, we're having a beer flight. Let's rank the 4 beers. Or you go to a coffee shop and rank cookies. Or you go to a restaurant, rank your favorite dish. And so there's, we're finding all sorts of ways to, have a lot of fun with these. But it is that mock election, seeing that ballot. For our work, this is really where the education starts clicking in. And so we're thinking of all sorts of different ways to help people learn and have that light bulb go off. So if you have new ideas on things we should be ranking,
Wait,
let us know.
was this a congressional election or a Juneau election or a local election? Because if it isn't a local election, we just sent summer to DC or to Juneau. And it's going to stay in winter there. And that's
Summer's going to have a tough time in Juneau. or no, I guess. So with ranked choice voting, from a candidate's perspective and a voter perspective, obviously it kind of changes the calculus on how you win and how you act. From a voter perspective, if you've ever had to vote in a 3-way race or a 4-way race, and you've been told, well, this candidate is the spoiler, or if you vote for that person, you're going to waste your vote. With ranked choice voting, that no longer is the case. You can vote with your heart and your head. You can vote for your neighbor who's not going to win because they only want to talk about one issue and they haven't raised any money, but you want to show support. But that's not going to hurt the other candidates who you want to support as well. It won't hurt your number 2 unless they're eliminated. But if they're eliminated first, your first would stay with you. So it really changes how candidates have to think. It encourages campaigns to engage with voters on issues as opposed to just going directly to their base. You have to start thinking differently. And as I mentioned, it helps ensure that you have winners who have that true majority of support from voters. Again, not the majority of first place votes per se, but the majority of that support. Okay, I got, a third of the first place votes, but I got 50% of the second place votes, which means a lot of my district feels good about me going down. I mean, not the best, but good. And that changes between that binary choice of, well, I don't like either, so I won't vote. Or if this person wins and I hate them, I don't want to engage with them. They don't engage with me, and I'm stuck with this person. And I might disengage from a community standpoint, from a voter perspective. Now I don't even care. Now you kind of think differently as a voter. We got a question. So as I mentioned, it requires candidates to work towards a majority and not just a plurality. And really getting that first choice support is important. But as we saw in the example, getting that second and third choice is almost just as important. So how does a candidate think differently when they're trying to earn your second place choice or your third choice? I was an independent lawmaker, and I ran nonpartisan, and I had to knock on every door. I couldn't just go to Republicans or Democrats. I had to knock on every door. And that's different than how, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, how you usually campaign. But you find ways to get to that common ground conversation. Okay, well, maybe you don't vote for me because you're more conservative than I am, but we found some issues we liked together. And so you have to start thinking differently and campaigning differently.
Well, I think that line, second bullet, the very first 4 words, building a winning coalition. I think that subsumes it really well.
No,
coalition.
No, that's great feedback. It's a coalition of voters. Like as mentioned, you can't go to your base and say, well, I'm good. If they just get out to vote, I'll be good to go. Unless you're very confident that you'll get that 50% in that first round. Now you have to think about, well, how am I gaining votes? How am I earning more supporters through that second round to get me to that 50% plus 1? Oh, question.
What happens if the vote ends with a top 2 tie?
Yeah, so ties, our state has a history with ties. That hasn't changed. The statute hasn't changed. If there is a tie, we flip a coin still, which sounds crazy to me, but that's still how it is. So in the same, Jim, to your question, this is if the top 2 are tied. In the same way, in a 4-way race, if candidates, if A, B, C, and D 4-way race, if C and D are tied for last place, who do we eliminate? We flip a coin. So if me and Julie are in last place together, we flip a coin, Julie wins, so I'm eliminated, and then my votes are there, are distributed. Julie could be in second place now or third place, but it's a coin flip still.
That did not change the ballot measure 2.
No, that doesn't sound like some crazy idea we put in with this. This is how our state has decided to do it.
So I remember we taking poli-sci. We actually talked about this. I want to say they're in the hazy recesses of my memory, like once for maybe 5 minutes. Something we did talk about a lot though was the differences between, say, what we have, again, first across the line binary system and say a parliamentary system, where, because there are different parties and you're voting for slates, different perspectives receive a certain number of seats based on their proportion of the voting public in the legislature, as opposed to a Republican or Democrat. That's why you can have Greens and these and that and this and that. This actually seems to kind of blend it fairly well because people still get to vote their conscience and will be slightly represented.
It is, and I think, again, instead of asking a candidate to drop out because you're going to split the vote, or to ask a voter to vote for someone they know is going to probably lose, now you can do both. You can have that third candidate come in and say, okay, well, I'm a progressive, and there's already a progressive in the race. Well, it's not going to split the vote between the progressive voters because now they can vote for both, or vice versa with other parties. And from a voter standpoint, the same way, going, well, there's a Democrat and independent who I really both like. Who do I have to think in my head who's probably going to win, even though I don't really want to vote for that person, but I want to vote for the winner because I don't want that third person who I really don't like to win if I split the vote. And now you don't have to think that way. You can really vote with your head and your heart without hurting the chances of candidates who maybe are the front runner or have the best chance of winning.
Or if there are districts in the state that it's pretty much decided the primary, right? Because they don't have a choice at the general because the district is overwhelmingly progressive or conservative. And so for that, they would actually, hopefully, with competition, be able to have a choice at the general because they can have different flavors within that continuum as opposed to just that binary choice.
Okay. Yeah, then this is one of those cases where, if you believe competition makes things better, if you believe in, competition making people rise to the top and think differently, think innovatively, having more candidates in a race and having people trying to earn that second and third vote. If you were a restaurant owner, if you were the only restaurant in town, you could kind of do whatever you want in terms of your meals or what you pay people or how your wait staff is. If all of a sudden there's 10 restaurants in town and you want to survive, what do? You have to think differently, act differently, have a better chef, have a better menu. Same way as a candidate, if I'm trying to earn second and third votes, do I go into negative advertising? Well, that might not work. Do I avoid the Republicans in my district? Because that's what I usually did. Well, that's probably not going to work. So you do have to think differently in this more competitive standpoint.
I would open it up.
Oh, well, we have one more change, and
Okay,
this will be quick and easy. From a voter standpoint, this won't impact how you vote, but this impacts the information you receive as a voter. Dark money gets tossed around for many different reasons. That term with ballot measure 2, it didn't eliminate donations. It didn't do what maybe you've seen in the news in terms of the new unlimited campaign contribution limits. It didn't stop outside money, none of those things. But what it does is eliminates dark money, really shining a light on all the different types of money and who it's coming from and what. Dark money, really all it means is a true source of money is kind of getting funneled through a third party and then getting to an independent expenditure group who will then spend that money in support for a candidate or against certain candidates. Now through ballot measure 2, all it does is saying if someone receives more than $2,000 to a group that is working on campaigns, that the donor and the recipient have to disclose that money. If it's more than $2,000, they have to disclose that money within 24 hours of the gift. The example here is, if I'm Jason and I really want, I own an internet company and I want to deregulate the internet in Alaska. It's not regulated anyways, but but I want to regulate the internet in Alaska, and I have certain candidates who I know will do that. And I start a group called Alaskans for Apple Pie, and I give $1 million to that group, who then runs independent expenditures for the candidates who are going to help me with my changes that I want. In the past, that information wouldn't be known to the public for several months after the election, based on timing of when they had to report. Now this says if I give $1 million, both myself and the group Alaskans for Apple Pie have to make that public. They have to disclose that within 24 hours. Doesn't stop the fact I can still give my $1 million or whatever amount. What it does is let that information be known publicly so that voters can then make the decision on, well, why is Jason Green giving $1 million? I thought, they know who's giving it, they know the group, and it just gives more information to voters in a more real-time circumstance. Really quickly, just some FAQs that we get asked at what elections we've asked about that. These are all state elections. If you're sending someone to Juneau or to DC, you will be using this new system. So the ranked choice voting open primaries, that's happening this year in August, and in November, we'll be using this system. The state is educating in a lot of different ways, as I've mentioned, and providing language assistance to, on the ballot, on posters, on videos. They've done, according to law, there's about 12 different languages they have to translate things into, but they're going above and beyond in terms of the materials that they're printing, what they're doing, and making sure that these languages have resources.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
This actually goes back to the actual voting that we did, ranked choice voting. I was, as you were talking, looking over the results, and in round 1, Spring didn't even get one vote, but I put Spring in as one of my, I think that was my second choice or something, but it didn't even get a vote. How is this, how are we going to know if someone has been rigging the results? How are we going to protect against voter fraud?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The state of Alaska has a pretty intense chain of custody and voter integrity system. So our machines aren't connected to the internet. We still use hand ballots. When you take your ballot put into the machine, it scans it, takes a photo of it. So we have photos of every ballot that's received. And so you can match up results at the end of the night based on what has been calculated through the scanning, but also through the photos that it takes, the number of ballots that have been distributed at that location.
And the fact that the physical ballot remains.
Yeah, and the paper ballot, is still there. Your question of, well, I voted for Spring at another, not round one. It wasn't my first choice, but I ranked it maybe second or third. When Spring was eliminated, it only eliminated its first or no votes at all, and thus eliminated. It didn't eliminate the other choices that people gave Spring. It just eliminated its first choice opportunities and then distributed it from there. In the example of when we went to our corners of the room, if no one gave Spring a first choice, there'd be no one in the corner. They'd be eliminated. So then we'd go to, okay, we look again, no one has 50%. Where's the next round? And if Jomo was in the corner and had Summer, they got eliminated, they would just go to the next round. So if when someone's eliminated, it doesn't eliminate all of the ballots attached to it. It just eliminates it, that preferential choice.
What you're saying is that it was noted. The fact that he had voted Spring somehow was noted in system.
Correct.
But it never got a number one choice. No one
But
voted.
no one had ranked it number one.
And so when Spring's eliminated, if you gave Spring a number two vote, well, I mean, it's eliminated. It can't rise from the dead and come back as a candidate once it's eliminated.
Yeah, and I think the easy way to know that is that if the candidate is nobody's first choice, right, then it would be eliminated from the, like, it would have to at least be somebody's first choice to remain on the ballot.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
It's a great question.
Well, it's going to be neat.
Yeah, again, you can see on the screen here, just a quick recap, a couple of the changes that are happening. Again, open primaries, top four, all voters will receive the same ballot. The top four vote getters move on regardless of their party affiliation. In the general election, that's when you would rank your candidates 1, 2, 3, 4 as you see fit. And then as soon as someone gets to that 50% support, they'll be declared the winner. And then with that change to our disclosure laws, Alaskans will now know the true source of all the contributions that are coming to different groups.
So again, people can still give. They'll just.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's it's hard. If you found out that 3 months later, a group that was, against what you wanted, they were supporting another candidate that you liked, that might be information that you might want to know before you vote. And so this is just more transparency, which, more information for voters, we believe is a good thing.
Well, so the PACs remain. It's just the PACs
sure do.
have to say who funded the PAC.
And in that real time,
If it's up to 2,000, over 2,000.
Yeah, and I think in that real time, that's really kind of where that quick information, I think in our day and age, again, it doesn't help anyone to find out 3 months later. You really want to know before you vote the most information.
That Idi Amin was the major funder of.
Yeah, if Facebook gave, $10 million to a group and then I come in with a bill going, we need to, again, deregulate, big tech or whatever, you might want to know that Facebook gave a group $10 million that was supporting me ahead of time. Again, it might not change your vote, but you deserve to know in that ahead of time. So quickly, as community leaders, people who are plugged in, people who talk, people have networks. As I said, the more people, more organizations, the more individuals kind of rowing in the same direction with the correct information, that's what's going to make really this system successful, which is what we want. We want to believe in our elections and have integrity and security and feel that our vote is counted. So the more information we can get out to everyone, the better. So we always ask people, what resources would be best? If this is a presentation, we're a casual conversation, but would a 3-minute video explaining this do really well? Would a mock election in your community or in your network do really well? And how do you share information yourself? If you're a big social media person, an article or videos that you see on our website, is that helpful? If you're not on social media, but you like calling into talk radio, what's the best way that you can share correct information? Just be helpful in this process, because we want to see this successful, because we want voters to believe in our system and feel empowered. And so that's why we love sitting down and talking to people and answering questions. Thank you for the time. We covered a lot, and you probably have lots of many other questions. We could share 2 hours of presentation and ways to not vote maybe, but hopefully this answers some questions and got you thinking about these elections coming up. So thank you so much.
Okay, well,
yeah, no. So if there's questions, please feel free to give us an email or a call. Like I said, the tie, what happens in a tie? Great question. What happens if someone drops out? How do they replace someone? Is there room for a write-in? There is. But if there's a question that pops up, or you hear of another question or want some correct information on something, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to engage in any way we can.
okay. Well, that was great. Thank you so much. Again, we had a couple of presentations last year.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting note as far as, again, it's going to be in statewide elections, again, House, Senate, for the legislature, congressional, senatorial, presidential, not necessarily municipal.
Yeah, so if you think of it, of who you send to Juneau and who you send to DC, that's who you'll be using the system under.
Okay, for sure.
Yeah.
And again, I guess communities could opt if they wanted to go this way.
Yeah, we're starting to get questions. As I mentioned, Utah, there's 23 cities in Utah that are using it. They had great success. All the polls said people loved it, did what it's supposed to do. And some of the benefits that we talked about. They actually now have it on a ballot initiative similar to ours this fall, that they want to start using it as a statewide level.
Statewide mechanism.
There's 4 states actually who have it on their ballot doing it like we are now, because it's growing in popularity for, again, some of the benefits people are seeing. They want to be enacted in their state. At the municipality level, at the city level, a lot of cities are now using it. I think in the next 5 years, there's another 40 cities that are now going to use it. They see it as a cost saving measure mostly. You can eliminate runoffs. You don't have to do 2 elections. You can, in Anchorage, we elect our mayor. If they don't receive 50%, the top 2 then move on.
And it's not a full-blown election.
If you were using ranked choice voting, you wouldn't have to have a whole other election. You'd probably save about $2 million and everyone's time and money and resources and everything else. And so you're starting to see that momentum go, because people are, again, willing to at least try new things and think about our elections in a new way. So hopefully this goes well, and we're a shining example to many other places. And with your help, we'll make it.
Well, the proof will be in the pudding.
Very true.
We'll look back a couple of election cycles from now and see what kind of impact it had as far as our representation.
Very true. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, hey guys, I would open it up. 2 of the big movers and shakers. Doug, Carl, anything final? Any other questions? All right.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Well, all right, everybody, that is it for today. I have no idea what we're going to be doing next week for a presentation, but I will let you know. We may actually do a little legislative review. I think we missed a number of members today because the chamber was going to be having a discussion with the interior delegation. And so I think that started at 8:30. So I think a lot of people were logging onto that. But again, we'll see what we have for next week, and I'll let everyone know. Again, Alaskans for Better Elections, thank you so much. Thank you very much for your work in advance. But of course, now on the back end to make sure people will understand as much as possible how this is going to work, so they can participate. In the end, that's what it's all about, citizen participation. All right. Well, thanks a million, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.